Breece buries the Broncos as Quincy Williams continues what is really, let's be honest, an all-pro type of season up to this point. I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation.com. Be sure to log in to JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Jets go into Denver. They want to avenge the honor of Nathaniel Hackett being stomped on by Sean Payton earlier this year, saying that Hackett did one of the worst coaching jobs he's ever seen. And the Jets go into Denver. They start slow. Again, this is their thing. Slow starters. They're down 7-3 early on. They're down 10-5 early on. Offense, they kick a field goal early, which I believe was their first offensive points of the season in the first quarter. And then the Breece Hall show takes over, especially in the second half where Breece in the third quarter breaks off a 72-yard touchdown run. On the day, Breece Hall finishes with 177 yards on 22 carries, 8 yards a clip. That is absolutely insane. Again, had the 72-yard touchdown run. Not much else to speak of on the ground. Dalvin Cook, 6 for 23, 3.8, which is probably his best of the year. Zach Wilson ran it 3 times for 26. Zach Wilson, as I said during the game, if you're still saying he's the same guy, then you either weren't paying attention last year or you're not paying attention this year, or maybe a little bit of both. But Zach Wilson is a guy who coming into this year was a sub 55% completion quarterback. Just in the last 2 weeks, he's completed 72%. A lot of that on short stuff that we've said it a billion times in the past that he just couldn't hit consistently last year. The short stuff, and we saw it today as I'm watching this game and I'm watching these early drives where they're not doing a ton, but they're moving the ball, they're sustaining some drives, and a lot of it is on the short stuff, the swings. We saw Breece with a couple of early catches, and I'm thinking you couldn't do this with Zach Wilson before this season. You couldn't reliably sit back and say, well, we'll run a bunch of short stuff early and let Zach try to get him into a rhythm. You couldn't do it because he couldn't do it. But now he is, and that opens other things up. And the run game, listen, especially on the interior, I thought I'm really looking forward to the all 22 on this one. I thought Connor McGovern had a really good game. Tippmann, too. Lakin Tomlinson had a couple of ugly reps, but I think all in all, the interior played really well. Some concern, of course, if you watch the game, Elijah Vera Tucker starting right tackle, left the game. Again, an injury in Denver. Again, Vera Tucker doesn't finish a game out there against the Broncos. Leaves with what is called a calf injury, does not return. Couple of scary moments. Mekhi Becton comes off for a few plays. Then a couple series later, if it was even that long, he's down on the turf again, being tended to by trainers. And you're thinking, oh boy, here we go. Becton comes back in, does just fine. Max Mitchell filled in at right tackle for Elijah Vera Tucker. Did a respectable job out there. So some questions, obviously, about Vera Tucker's health moving forward. I'd said a couple weeks ago, when Carter Warren comes back, it's going to be interesting to see if he gets on the field. And he just might. If AVT is down, they'll work Warren in practice and see how that goes. But on the day for the offense, not a ton from Garrett Wilson. There was an interception. Zach Wilson threw a pick late in the game that, funny enough, poorly thrown ball. Zach has to throw a better ball. It was supposed to be a back shoulder throw. Threw it too far to the inside. But Patrick Surtain grabs the jersey of Garrett Wilson. So Wilson, the ball does go through Garrett Wilson's hands, but it's at an awkward angle because it's in a bad spot, and he's got Surtain pulling on his jersey. But the referees let them play. The referee's like, he's pulling his jersey, but it's late in the game, big spot. We're not going to change the trajectory. We're not going to change the outcome of the game by throwing a flag. Who in the world would do that? Right? So anyway, that's that. That's the Zach Wilson INT comes on a ball to Garrett Wilson, who had 3 catches for 54. Big play by Tyler Conklin at one point on a big ball from Zach Wilson, third down late in the game, 3rd and 6 or 7, I believe. Wilson drops back, the pocket's collapsing. He delivers a strike to Conklin, who drags about 7 Denver Broncos for an extra 8 to 10 yards. Fantastic play by him. That dude was fired up. He clearly wanted it. And it was nice to see the Jets eventually get it together because it was discouraging early. We saw CJ Uzama before the game. He'd come out of the tunnel, and we're going to effing do this for our coach. Again, speaking of the Nathaniel Hackett thing, they've made it personal. Let's make them pay. F them, F everybody, blah, blah, blah. And then they come out and they're dropping passes left and right. The pass protection was ugly early on. There were turnovers, and you just felt like this is it, huh? This is the fired up for the offensive coordinator. You come out, you can't catch a ball, you can't block anybody. But again, eventually they settled down. The pass pro got better. But the Jets defense, I mean, listen, give them credit. Down a couple of corners, and again, something we won't see till we check out the all 22. But the commentators mentioned it several times. Russell Wilson nowhere to go with the ball. Russell Wilson holding onto the ball, taking sacks, taking hits. He didn't have a great day. He actually second week in a row. Well, I guess he did have the couple TD passes, but 20 for 31, 196. Not a huge day for him. 6.3 per completion average. Zach Wilson 7.7 per completion on 19 out of 26 passing, 199 yards. Did not throw any touchdowns. He did have the pick. But all in all, listen, this was supposed to be the formula, right? Again, the defense wasn't dominant, but 8 points in the second half. We pointed out the other day on the show we did, saying that if you look at this Jets defense, like they need to get off the better starts, but they shut teams down in the second half. And we saw them do it again today. Denver shut out in the third quarter, scored a touchdown with a 2-point conversion late in the fourth quarter. So really, this team was a couple plays away from a second half shutout, and 8 points in the second half. I'll take it. So we just keep seeing it from this defense: sloppy starts, get things together, and it's the definition of a bend but don't break defense, right? You see they're giving up these big chunk plays early on. Jaleel McLaughlin was having these huge runs. We were seeing they were getting torn up on the ground by Russell Wilson, who ended up with 7 carries for 49. So they were just getting killed on the ground, getting gashed on the short stuff, dinking and dunking. Samaje Perine had a big play or a 29-yard reception that bumped his numbers up. But really, outside of him, and P. Ryan finished with 18.3 per reception. Nobody over 8.5, it looks like. Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton, number one receiver, didn't have any catches till late in the fourth quarter. He finishes with one catch for 13. So really just a fantastic job by the defense in the red zone. They flashed a graphic during the game. Jets defense, number one in the NFL in the red zone this year. I believe they've given up 3 touchdowns and 12 trips up to that point, 3 or 4 and 12 trips, and then they get a couple more stops. So we're watching this Denver offense march up and down the field, and then the Jets defense locked down inside the 20, inside the 10. So really, it didn't look pretty, but at the end of the day, they're keeping them out of the end zone. Modern day NFL, folks, you keep a team in the 20-21 range, sort of under 23-24, you should win those games. And if the Jets keep following this formula, and we keep seeing these big days on the ground, and just manage the ball through the air with Zach Wilson, have Breece Hall pound it. Hopefully at some point we get Izzy Abanikanda in there. We've had that conversation a couple of times now, but really, as I'm watching Breece Hall break that 73-yarder, 72-yard touchdown, and I'm hearing the broadcast, this is terrible. I guess it was Tiki. I don't know which one of the broadcasters it was. Everyone seemed to say it was Tiki. Do a little homework before these games. It's not like Breece Hall is like the fourth running back on the roster and you're not expecting him to get a carry, so you don't really brush up and you cheat on your homework a little bit. Like, it's not the right thing to do, but you kind of get it. He's the starting running back. The head coach just came out the other day and said no more pitch count for this guy. He's the dude. He's getting the ball. And you come into the game, you're Tiki Barber, and he breaks a 72-yarder, and you say, "Oh, well, he's not a 4.4 guy, but he's got surprising speed. He's sneaky fast. He ran a 4.39 prior to he is a sub 4.4 guy. So he is not sneaky fast. He is just fast. 220 and runs a 4.39 and showed every bit of it on that 72-yarder, hit 21.5, fastest play of the year by a non-Miami Dolphin. And I'm watching that and I'm thinking, can we get Izzy Abanikanda active? He's faster than Breece Hall. He's faster. I'm not saying he's as good, but you have Hall and Abanikanda on the field, both of those guys to swap them out with each other versus Dalvin Cook, who is not as fast as Breece Hall or not nearly as fast as Breece Hall. Just a thought. Just a thought. But all around, big win. Had to have this. Look, if they lose this game, the season's over, right? And now we're starting to see, or tonight what we saw, I should say, was the Jets doing what they're supposed to be able to do. Get big stops on defense, which they did several times. Listen, they were getting dogged on Twitter. This defense is overrated. And listen, they are to this point. Their performance up to now has been less than what we expected. However, as I said to someone the other day, they're not terrible. It's not like this team is going out and giving up 40, 50 points. Like, if you didn't look at any scores and you just listened to what fans were saying about this defense on social media, you would think it was a sieve and they were giving up 35, 40 points a game. What it is they were expected to be dominant, and instead of dominant, they're good. And on some days, they're very good. Well, let's be honest, they haven't had any very good days yet because you can't have look McLaughlin's 7.6 a carry. You can't have that. But again, it was just bend don't break, and every time Denver got into the red zone, or almost every time Denver got into the red zone, the Jets got the stop, and the defense in the end got the job done. They held Denver to a low enough total that you should win that game, and they did win the game. So, was the defense? Did they play to their ceiling? No. Did they play well enough to win? Absolutely, and they got the win. Again, Zach Wilson, really weird, right? I mean, no gaudy numbers, not like he threw for 290, 320, or whatever. Threw for 199, just under a couple hundred. But I think what is, to me, the reason I feel like it feels more is because we saw a lot of, I would say 3 or 4 really clutch throws or just really impressive throws that were down the field that wasn't the short dink and dunk stuff. So we saw him open it up a little bit. We saw him make some key throws in big spots. The interception is a blemish, but as I said, you had you had poor ball placement, but still a ball that's somewhat catchable as the play unfolded, but even more catchable if Garrett Wilson's not being held by Patrick Surtain. So, not an ideal situation. Again, Zach was not perfect, but he was much better. As I said, 72% completion percentage over the past 2 games. He's not done that at any point in his career. And it does look like this is 2 in a row. And listen, Denver, we talked all week about how bad this Denver defense is, right? But they got several guys back today. They were missing 3 starters on defense. They got them all back today, and that helped. Joyzy Jewell's probably the most notable guy, and he had, if I'm not mistaken, he had a ton of tackles. I'm gonna check his numbers real quick. Joyzy Jewell, okay, so he only had 6. He had a few early on because he seemed like he was all over the place. And he's a starting player. They got 3 starters back on defense. Of course, that's going to help you out. And in terms of QB hits, let's cover those real quick. Quincy, as I said, 2 sacks, 3 QB hits. Jermaine Johnson had one with his sack. Bryce Huff had a couple of sacks. Al Woods had the sack that led to the safety um, early on that made it 10-5. So no turnovers, or sorry, no interceptions for the Jets defense, and just the one thrown by Zach Wilson. So what does this mean? It means you're not out of it, and you're playing a brand of football that many times, more often than not, will get you a victory. I know we can talk about the fact, who cares? It's the Broncos. They're terrible. Well, again, as I just said, they got 3 starters back on defense, so they were bound to be better, and they were. The Jets still managed to put up some points. They managed to move the ball. And the scoop and score at the end, obviously, is what put it out of reach. So the defensive score, that was nice to see. So big game for the Jets. Big win on the road, hostile environment against a defense that was, expected to play at a higher level, and they did. But Zach did what he had to do. He did what was asked of him, and we saw Breece go absolutely nuts. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, where we see him joined in the backfield by a younger, more explosive back. I don't know what's going to happen with Dalvin Cook at this point. I would imagine he hangs around for a bit, but as I posted earlier, the Jets could save a few million by letting him go, and that's a few million they could spend on a player going into next season. We'll see what happens there. Haven't seen any updates on Elijah Vera Tucker's status on the calf injury. Hopefully, nothing too serious, nothing too long. We'll have more on that. And all of this, everything, we will cover more on Wednesday night. We're going to move the show to Wednesday nights for the time being. Myself and Chris Schubert, Jet Nation Live, Be sure to log in, tune in, and chime in. Have a good one, Jets fans.